I have been playing tabletop role-playing games for years. It started with D&D 5e. I bought the Player's Handbook, DMG, and Monster Manual as I was moving into a new place and began playing with my roommates. I had no experience playing or running any TTRPG, but the lore, characters, monsters, and magic items fascinated me, so I cobbled together a campaign. I can't say I was the best at being a game master. The story was your typical high fantasy gods and demons fare. Balancing combat was always hit or miss, and some of the complexity of the system really worked against my group. But I didn't know enough to be able to address the problems that came up. I tried, of course. Combat took too long, so I lowered monsters' armor class and bumped their health down a bit too, for good measure. But that was only one of a whole list of problems we had. I say we had problems with D&D not to imply that it's a bad game. It's not. Or to claim we didn't have fun with it. We did. However, our casual group would have likely been better served with a much more simplistic system. About a year after we started playing, our campaign slowly fizzled out and died. For a while after, I didn't play anything. And then I found a new group. In this group, I played or ran D&D a few times. Then we began experimenting with other systems. Systems like Morkborg, Blades in the Dark, and currently Cyborg. During this time, I have read through several systems, whether fully fledged books like Mutants and Masterminds, or miniature one-page TTRPGs like Dungeons and Business Cards. The different ways these systems handle their mechanics is fascinating to me. Many rely on the typical D20 system with its contests, saving throws, and rollover targets. Others have you roll under your character's skills or attributes to determine if you succeed. Still others use degrees of success, where even should you technically succeed, it may only be a partial success, introducing consequences because of your less than stellar roll. All this to say there is an entire world of variety when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, and that has inspired me. It's got me thinking of what my ideal TTRPG would look like, and what sort of mechanics or features I'm interested in seeing in a system. I have attempted to make my perfect game before, but it ended up becoming a bloated mess that, while not unplayable, was in such a sad state that it would have taken more work to polish up to a decent standard than simply starting fresh. So I abandoned it. Then, a few days ago, I had an idea. What if we used coins instead of dice? And I don't mean we use them as a 50-50 chance. That can easily be accomplished with dice. I mean when we flip them for a test. What if we take the value of the coin if it lands face up? So a face up penny is 1, a nickel 5, a dime 10, and a quarter 25. Anything that lands on tails is 0. Feeling inspired, I started work on the project that evening and hashed out the rough rules for It's High Noon, a coin-flipping Wild West shootout game where you and your opponent place bets on if you land your shot or not. Both sides flip their coins and add up the value of any that land face up. If the shooter's value is higher, the shot lands. If the opponent's value is higher, they miss. And most important of all, in the Wild West, shootin' solves every problem. I imagine it both as a serious Western where the outlaws, the player characters, go on missions to rob, steal, and do whatever it takes to make a buck, as well as a goofy caricature of the Old West where you pull iron for every problem that arises. A drunk insults you at the saloon. "Meet me outside, you fiddle-headed drunk, and you'd best be wearing iron." Your barber won't give a discount, a half-dime discount. Says I can shoot more bottles from that fence post outside than you can. Simple, if somewhat forced. The day after I wrote down the rules, I pulled assets to make a prototype. It has the rules for making an outlaw alongside equipment and consumables on one side, and combat rules on the other. I nailed down the idea of what I want the final product to look like, then did some trial runs of combat. They didn't go as well as I'd hoped. I was using the same betting system to determine turn order, called your draw or draw speed, but there was no reason to go first because I was handing out the value of face-up coins to whoever had the winning bet. I quickly decided to switch it so that only the shooter could regain any of their bet if they won, and the defender would always lose whatever they bet. This introduces another layer of strategy where you want to bet high when shooting to try and recoup some of your bet, and just enough when defending to hopefully make your opponent lose their large bet while not sacrificing too much of your own money. However, that wasn't the only problem, because money is power in this system, or more precisely, money is endurance. See, you can't just bet $1 million every time and guarantee a victory. You are forced to bet within the bet range set by your weapons and character perks, which only goes up to $1.35 at the extreme end of things. So, even if you have a lot of money, it doesn't mean you can always win. It does mean you can last longer or place more frequent large bets. For the players, lots of resources to tide over long battles is fine. They shouldn't really be in danger until their misdeeds finally put them in a situation they simply cannot handle, or they make a dumb choice. The trouble comes from the way enemies were made. I had jotted down a quick few opponents for the outlaws to face. Drunks, cowboys, bartenders, deputies, sheriffs, gunslingers, rangers, marshals, and demons. The lower down the list they are, the less money they have, and the smaller their maximum bet is. All of their guns can make bets large enough for duels or contests to resolve quickly, if the game master isn't too skittish. I found my tendency was to bet low, maximizing coins flipped while minimizing my expense. 19 cents was my bet for almost every shot I took, because it gave me 6 coins for a fairly cheap cost. For players, that could be fine, but for enemies it makes combat drag. I was finding drunks could last 3 or 4 shots, bartenders made it to 5, but marshals could last up to 15. Duels shouldn't drag on, they should be sudden and deadly, leaving the survivor plenty of time to return to the saloon just as they left it. Save the stunned crowd. Having that in mind, I raised the ante, the minimum bet, for every weapon. With that, duels and contests are more decisive. It adds more reason to buy better guns, because not only is the maximum bet higher, but the betting range is larger, allowing more betting freedom on higher-end weapons. With higher bets and quicker combat, the players are inevitably going to rack up a hefty bounty. Currently, I'm dealing with this by saying that for every duel they engage in, invariably leading to at least one man getting shot dead, each outlaw gains an extra $5 to their bounty. Once that reaches $25, lawmen begin taking notice. Maybe they demand a bribe to look the other way when the outlaws come to town. Maybe they try to toss them in jail. Or maybe they simply ignore them, deciding it's not worth risking their life over. When a bounty reaches $100, now that's an altogether different problem. Posses may form up to take the notorious group down, boasting up to 15 men, and not one looking to bring them in alive. The outlaws can escape the ire of the law by simply paying off their own bounty, although with such a steep cost they may find that difficult. While there's no leveling system in place for the game, there are plenty of goals available for a short campaign. The outlaws will want to gain money by winning duels and contests, allowing them to last longer in future encounters. They will eventually spend that money on better weapons or on role-playing items like beer, whiskey, meals, horses, or fine Switzerland dark chocolate. If they run out of stuff to buy or need a challenge of a different sort, they can search for the Devil's 6 Fingers. By far the best weapon in the game. A legendary revolver that was split into 6 pieces. Each piece is currently in the possession of a demon, and they'll either have to serve the demon by performing some truly evil deeds, or challenge them to a duel and win. What happens when the outlaws acquire all 6 pieces? Does their legend go down in history as a notorious, unstoppable band of outlaws with the Devil's 6 Fingers always close by? Do they turn on each other after acquiring the weapon, making their last major duel with each other? Or do they continue the hunt, ever wondering, what about the Devil's other hand? Ultimately, it's a simple open-ended system, requiring the front and back of one page for the rules, a handful of coins for the bets, and whatever else you want to tack on top of it for flavor. If you play it, I hope you enjoy. And if you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I've included the 2-page system in the description below. If I adjust it in the future, I'll add that as well, and maybe make another video if the rework is significant enough.